Let's take a look at an overview of aerobic respiration, kind of a visual summary. Sometimes this is pretty helpful because there are just so many details during this process. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to write this down, draw it as best you can, and then come back and write down some details for yourself with descriptions. Okay, so step one. Step one, remember we said no matter what kind of respiration you're going to carry out something called glycolysis, which happens in the cytoplasm. What we're doing during glycolysis is we're taking glucose and we're turning it into and converting it into pyruvate, which remember is a 3-carbon compound. So we're going to make 2 of those. In the end, we're going to gain 2 ATP because remember we had to use 2 ATP, we made 4 ATP, so we've only gained 2 ATP here. If there's oxygen present, which in this case we're aerobic, we're going to move into the mitochondria, and step 2, we're going to carry out the Krebs cycle. Now it's drawn as circles because it really is a cycle. It has to turn, remember, 2 times. 1 time for each pyruvate that got made during glycolysis. And remember we made 2 of those for every glucose. So the Krebs cycle is going to go around twice, and this is happening in the mitochondrial matrix. And then the end of that, we're going to make 2 ATP. Not too shabby. Still not a whole lot, though. Remember, we had some things that were made. We transferred hydrogens or electrons over to our carriers. Those are going to come over during the step 3, the ETC, electron transport chain, or sometimes we call it oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative, because in this case, we're taking the hydrogens or electrons off of our carriers, and phosphorylation because we're adding the phosphorus or the phosphate back to ADP to turn it into ATP. This is happening in the cristae membrane. So that's that twisted looking membrane in the mitochondria. This is where our big energy maker is because during ETC we're going to gain 32 to 34 ATP depending on the process and the time. So in the end we have a total gain of 36 to 38 ATP. Now, when you're taking the Regents exam, they're just going to simplify it, and they're only going to use 36 ATP to make it easy on yourself. So they're usually going to estimate on the low end of ATP production during the electron transport chain of only 32 to give you a total gain of 36 ATP. We know sometimes, though, it can be a little bit more. So make sure you have your summary. Maybe you can create some sort of a song or a poem or something for yourself in order to help remember this entire process. Maybe you can make your own diagrams or some sort of a flow chart for yourself for memory.